MGM rolled out their 100 movies for $100, and yeah, they sent us a whole bunch of stuff. This is my first movie review. You guys voted for The Great Escape. I'm going to talk about it right now. All right, The Great Escape. Yes, Steve McQueen on the motorcycle making his jump. That's what's on the posters. That's what many people associate with this movie. And if you think this is like this big action adventure film with Steve McQueen zooming around on this motorcycle extensively, first off, I don't want to disappoint you because I really want to praise this movie. It is a fantastic movie. It's almost 3 hours long, so it's rather lengthy, but this is a very smart, strategic film about setting up intrigue and I don't want to say thrills or suspense, but y- it's a master class on creating characters that you enjoy and you're rooting for. And the suspense comes of knowing if they can get away, do they get caught, how they get caught, what their fate will be, that kind of thing. So, but if this is what you're thinking, you might be disappointed. This is a better representation of the movie, right? Them on foot trying to get away. And actually, that's still the very last 20 to 30 minutes or so of the film. Most of the film is them scheming, them conniving, trying to find ways to uh, pool together their resources, what their scheme will be, what their grand plan will be, and just great characters having screen time, just doing a really cool stuff. So let's talk about a little bit elements of it. The great cast is probably the biggest headline here. So let's go through it a little bit. All right, the plot centers around that ever so famous angry Austrian painter club have gathered together all the miscreants that keep getting out of all the different prison camps and stalags and put them all into one place to be under scrutiny and watch and that kind of thing, which in hindsight seemed like a really, really stupid idea. So you end up basically this great motley crew of people who are really, really good at escaping prisons all thrown in together, and you're going to have this great plan of what they're going to come up with how to get not just a couple of people out, not one or two at a time, but like let's get 250 people out. Let's get a ton of guys out. That even if we get caught or whatever, just them looking for us, just having people scattered all about would create so much chaos. It would be for the benefit of the war. All right, so here's our hero, Steve McQueen. That's right. He basically is Captain Cooler, right? Hiltz is always getting himself through another escape, getting himself caught on purpose sometimes, and in prison. Basically, is the guy that you really, really enjoy rooting for. He is cool. He has swagger. I love the fact that in some of the opening sequences, you'll learn a lot about the characters just through them interacting with one another. But look at McQueen. He's got on these light colored trousers. He's scoping out the fence right from day one. There's a blind spot. He's got a scheme in his head, and it kind of creates a running, I don't want to say a running gag, but it's a running theme through the film. And then of course it turns sideways when his little cohort, he gets caught up and just kind of snaps and that kind of thing. So again, each character has different story arcs and just really trying to pull through an emotional journey of what these POWs went through. All right, the real star of the show is Richard Attenborough. Richard Attenborough plays sort of the mastermind. He is the guy that is like the great schemer, the great organizer, the great leader. He can see the strengths in everyone. He knows how to pull everyone together, motivate them, push their buttons. He doesn't show up for like 30 minutes or so. And then, of course, he is sort of like the central figure that everything kind of works from. Even though Ramsey, who's, I guess, the one really in charge, he's the guy with the limp for those of you watching the movie, it really Attenborough's the guy that's in charge of everything, and he delivers just a top-notch performance. He is fantastic. He is really the star of the show. All right, the next big star who steals every scene. Talk about just he's just fantastic, and that is James Garner. James Garner is probably my favorite character. He is sort of like this classy, sneaky thief. He is the one that can gather like the most absurd items. He can find all these different things, and he has this great exchange right here with Werner. He's one of the Yahtzee soldiers, where he is kind of like playing like a bribery game, but he's also just like basically ends up stealing his records, and they can use those for forgeries. Just he exudes confidence, charisma, strong character. I mean, he just everything you want of him. And then, of course, at the end of the film, he has this great twist of fate with Donald Pleasant's character, who is slowly going blind. He basically just takes ownership of this character. He's like, I'll help him get out. I know he can't see well. I'll help he'll be with me. And of course, fate turns sideways on that character. And yeah, it's really really heartbreaking. It's really 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 powerful stuff. Speaking of Donald Pleasance, is his character Blythe. Blythe is a master forger, sweet, genuine guy. He has several scenes of this sort of like British elite mentality of drinking tea, what etiquette would be. He's a bird watcher. He's the uber nerd, but he also is like, I need a camera, but it has all these very specific specifications that he's looking for. And he's like this sweet guy that's caught up on all this that it's like wrong place, wrong time. You feel like he just doesn't fit in. He also is like the nerd that you could easily leave behind. Like you could see why they don't want to take him when they find out that he really can't see well, things like that. Great, great performance out of Donald Pleasance. Meanwhile, we cut back to Hiltz at one point where Hiltz has gotten back out of the cooler. He has a scheme right away with his little buddy. It's not going to work. Everyone knows it's not going to work. And the best part is they play it for a joke or they play it for levity because they set it all up and then when they cut back, they're all covered in the dirt. They're headed right back to the cooler, the isolation area, so you know it didn't work. But you weren't shown all that. So it's one of the times where things can be done off camera. It can be done well and the execution again is what's so superior in this film compared to most things. All right. So two of the characters, they're basically in the tunnel all the time, Danny and Willie. Danny is Charles Bronson. Now, other than Charles Bronson's accent, they give him kind of an odd accent. I don't care for the accent. But Charles Bronson is fantastic, and he is like totally showcases this digger. It's this raw, gritty. He's you know bare chested most of the time and sweaty, and showing off basically that machismo that you see manifest later on in his career. And here you just see this menacing, intimidating personality that no one really kind of wants to mess with, but we don't really quite know why. It's just everything is always very smart that we allude to things rather than get into the nitty gritty. So but yeah, he heads up the tunnel digging. Um, but he also suffers from claustrophobia, which is kind of the twist that kind of goes sideways on him later on in the film. So the twist is that they have this elaborate scheme. They've built this tunnel. They end up being a little bit short, and they're trying to move these men out through this mechanism. But they have this thing that you ride on. They pull this. They have this tap tap messaging system. They have this way of getting people out. Hiltz runs out to the tree line so he can let everybody know when it's safe to send the next person. And that's kind of what transpires to the last part of the movie till it kind of goes sideways. They end up getting caught and it stops those that can get away. And then it sends certain ones out into the wild as they try to survive and try to get to where it is they're going to. And that's kind of where you end up with the last, I don't know, say 30 to 40 minutes of the film is where you get them. The ones that got out, not everybody gets out. Some get onto a train, some get on a boat, and then you get Hiltz, which is Steve McQueen's character leading these Yahtzees on a little bike ride. The thing about the scene that works so well is the fact that he's just so good on a bike. It's just Steve McQueen. It's Steve McQueen being Steve McQueen. The scene itself is just him riding around, kind of like just literally just riding circles around these guys. Like they just have no idea what they're in for. They have no idea, uh, what he's capable of doing. So this is the big sequence that everybody has seen where you kind of see him going around with this barricade, how he's going to get around, how he's going to get past it all. He's surrounded on all sides, and then it says quickly up and over, and that's it. So that's the poster, that's the scene, that's what ends up that's what ends up making all the marketing material and that kind of thing. Um, but really, the film is about the escape. And then at the end, not most of them make it. And then they round them up, and you have all these sequences of how most of them are getting caught, even ones that you were cheering for, some that don't make it. And then it turns really, really dark and really, really heavy. Then you get a few of them get returned and end up back in the camp again. And it kind of ends with this, oh, I guess it's not over. You still have hope. What about tomorrow? Kind of stuff. So this is a film it's really exceedingly underrated because it's not a film I think most people would put into like their top 20 or top 50 or things like that. But it feels like such a precursor to everything that's come after it, like the action genre, the idea of having sort of like military drama